Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you all for being here where it's nice and warm, as opposed to being outside where it's minus 20, so typical Montreal day right there. Let me kick things off by giving a big shout out to the CUSEC team for organizing this and getting us all here. It's a lot of effort that goes into having an event like this, so join me in giving them a round of applause. Building software products is complicated. You often deal with conflicting priorities, you're dealing with limited resources, and this whole process is inherently chaotic. Product management as a role has really been brought into the spotlight over the past decade, and it's a role that's focused on balancing these different needs, these competing needs. So this session, we're going to talk through why this role has become so prominent. Give me 1 second. We're going to talk about why product managers exist, what they spend their time doing, and then we're going to switch into some practical advice for those of you who find yourselves working on teams with product managers, how best to leverage them as resources. And for those of you interested in actually pursuing this as a career path, how might you actually go about doing that? But first, let me introduce myself. So my name is Puneet. I've been building tech products for about years at this point. Got my start at McGill University, right up the street, studying computer engineering. And then I started my career as a developer, ended up in the tech startup space, ran some engineering teams, and eventually found my calling in the world of product management. I've been working for Stack Overflow for about 3 years now, and I'm currently one of the product management leads. So, quick show of hands here, how many of you know Stack Overflow? Almost everybody in the room, which is to be expected. We're at a software conference, right? Now, how many of you know that Stack has a job board? And that's a much smaller fraction. That gap is one of the reasons I have a job. So Stack Overflow is the world's largest Q&A site, question and answer site, with developers like yourselves around the world coming together, answering questions, and helping each other out by sharing knowledge. But the thing is, most of our users see us as that site that Google takes you to when you search the meaning of an error code. Most folks are unaware of the different paid services that we offer, or how we go about making money. And that's actually not that surprising if you consider the company's history. So Stack was founded in 2008, and in the 11 years or so that the company's been around, product management and marketing really only emerged as real first-level functions of the company about 4.5 years ago. That means for the first 6 years or so at the company, we didn't really have a strong process for deciding what to build next. We got lucky with our main offering. I mean, it resonated, it solved a real need in the market, and that's what people know us for. But what people don't see is the number of failed projects and failed features we've had in those first 6 years that were just things we tried out and didn't work. And the thing is, our engineering team would often just reach out directly to users in our community with very good intentions, trying to understand what they wanted, and they built what felt right. This is a very intuitive way to start reasoning about what to build next. The thing is, this amplifies the loudest voices in the room, and that's not always the best thing to do. Hackathons and pet projects that people worked on were basically put into production because people, again, were interested in the area, tried to build something cool, looked interesting. But they put that into production and then went to sales and said, hey, try selling this. It was literally the embodiment of build it and they will come, which is not really how you build scalable products. And that process is very chaotic. So today, it's a completely different world. We have really strong product and marketing teams at Stack Overflow that own all these processes, that partner with the different departments and different stakeholders of the company to really understand what are the right next steps for us, what are the right next things to build. We have very clear focus, a unified vision for the future of the company, and a clear sense of priorities. Our vision at Stack Overflow is to help everyone who codes come together in writing the script for the future. We see ourselves as a place for people who code to come be part of the community, where they can learn new skills, share knowledge, and connect with companies around relevant job opportunities, products, and services. In addition to our flagship Q&A sites, we actually have 3 different business offerings. Talent, which is about matching people who code and companies around relevant job opportunities. Advertising, which is all about enabling tech companies to promote their products and services and enabling developers to discover new relevant products. And finally, Stack Overflow for Teams, which is our newest offering. And this is about private Q&A for share knowledge within companies. So I manage our product teams for advertising and talent, and seeing as how a lot of you will soon be entering the job market, I definitely encourage you to go check out Stack Overflow Jobs, set up your profile, your preferences. The system will suggest relevant opportunities to you, and it's built with developer needs and preferences at its core. Now that my shameless plug is out of the way, let's get started with our talk. So one of the reasons I wanted to tell you this whole story about Stack's evolution is because it can draw a lot of parallels with that and understanding the importance of product management. It's going to make a good backdrop for the discussion we're about to have. So I want you to keep this in the back of your mind as we take a step back and think about the why. Why do product managers exist? And why has this role become so prominent over the past decade? I find it helpful to think through an example. And physical products are usually easier to reason about, so let's all pretend like we're working at a company that's about to produce the next generation of smartphones or cell phones. So we're going to start with some concepts, we're going to sketch out a few different ideas, and eventually narrow it down to a few prototypes that we want to actually build and test out. And then eventually we're going to do that until we narrow down to one final product. So that finished product, the story doesn't end there. Now that we've got this final product that we can sell, we got to go to market with it. And that's all about optimizing how we sell this thing, making sure we communicate about it correctly, make sure that we position it correctly, while the whole process repeats to go figure out what the next version should be. Now, if you think about the overall timeline for something like this, traditionally you have a dedicated research and development, or R&D team, working on that initial phase where you're gathering all this research, the data that you have, the insights, feedback, iterating on all these different concepts, and producing the final product. All this happens in the order of years. Once that phone is ready, it's handed off to a separate team, typically a dedicated marketing team, whose job is to bring it to market. So optimizing pricing, figuring out the best way to package and sell it, experimenting with accessories, add-ons, upsells, being able to partner with other folks to be able to bundle and sell your product more effectively, and all the communication that's involved. So your press releases, any announcements, all the materials that you're going to be putting out there. And that's, again, very iterative process, happens in the order of months. Software historically worked this way too. Oops. 1 second. Software historically worked this way too. So we would traditionally build software over the period of years, test it out, and then physically burn it onto CDs, put it onto disks, and ship it around the world. In fact, that is why we still call it shipping software. And for those of you who are familiar with the waterfall approach and why it was so prominent, this hopefully adds a little bit of context as to why that worked. It's really good for a system like this. Except a lot has changed in the past couple of decades that have completely changed how software is delivered. So you've got the advent of the internet, you've got smartphones, you've got app stores, different frameworks for building applications, things like continuous integration that makes pushing updates a breeze. That R&D cycle has gone from years down to hours. And I want you to think about that. That basically means a customer complaint in the morning can be identified, fixed, and deployed by the afternoon. You can build features and deploy them faster than users can actually discover and use those features. So of course, chaos ensues. Teams struggle with figuring out how to prioritize stuff. Do you focus on your new features, your new versions that you're trying to build, or optimizing what's currently out there based on the feedback that you're seeing? Things are constantly changing in your product, so the teams that depend on you, that produce those guides, those articles, the various onboarding materials, all those go out of sync. And the worst thing is your customers and your users expect you to respond in real time to the data and feedback that's coming out. Different stakeholders, can you all hear me? Yeah. Different stakeholders. Difficulties. The demo effect. Check. All right. So different stakeholders at your company have different priorities, and often they have conflicting requirements. So how do you deal with all this stuff? It doesn't matter, right? Because we're agile. We can figure it out. Deal with it as it comes. Amidst this chaos, teams tend to become very, very reactive to the latest bit of feedback that's coming in. Taming this chaos is the life of a product manager. So now that we've set the stage, I'm going to open this question to you all. What do product managers do? What do you think product managers do? Prioritize. Back there?
Tell developers what to do.
Tell developers what to do. I'm going to come back to that one. Let's put an asterisk on that. It's more of a partnership than you might think.
Making sure the product gets delivered on time.
Making sure the product gets delivered on time.
Supporting your team in any way possible.
Supporting your team in any way possible. That's a good one. Back there?
Everything.
Everything. One more back there, yeah?
Check competitors and make sure your team beats them.
Check competitors, make sure your team's better or beats them.
Forming a connect between the consumer and the developer.
That's a good one. Connecting the consumers to your developers. Last one.
Check the quality.
Check the quality of the work. Yeah, absolutely. We'll take one more.
Getting all the requirements from the customer.
Getting all the requirements from the customer is a really good one. Hopefully these responses illustrate that product managers do a lot. Like you said, everything in a sense, right? There's a lot of different things we do. For instance, here are a lot of the things that I've done just in the past year. And this is not a brag or anything like that, but the reason I'm putting all this stuff up here is because I want you to realize no one is an expert at all of these things. It's just impossible to be good at all of these things. PMs are not specialists, we are generalists. And it's not our job to do every single one of these things amazingly. It's our job to make sure our team can do all these things really well. And so what PMs spend their time doing really depends on the makeup of the team around us. You often work with specialists that really focus in on specific aspects of this. Every single one of those things on the board is a discipline on its own. You can specialize in that and you can really build an entire career around that. So let's say you're working on a team that has strong designers and UX researchers. As a PM, you're going to spend less time doing that. Instead, you're going to empower your specialists, make sure you arm them with the right context, the right information to make decisions. Trust that they will make those decisions, and you focus on filling in the gaps in the other parts of your team. That's a lot of talking. All right, so all these tasks can be overwhelming. It's helpful to actually categorize this. And so I like thinking of it in these 4 quadrants. Execution. This is the most common and visible part of the job. As somebody mentioned here, making sure things ship, making sure things move, projects are delivered, code is shipped. This is the most common visible part of the job, and keeping the team stable is the main outcome here. And all of this is fed by the strategy. This is about product management owning the why, having a very clear explanation as to why we're working on this thing and not some other thing. This is done by having a clear plan laid out with the management team, with your stakeholders, that give you a very clear sense of priorities that then inform the plan. So this is the stuff that's happening that's very visible. But then you have a few things that happen behind the scenes that most people don't really see PMs do. Influence. Nobody reports to product managers. They lead by influence, not by authority. And so, as a PM, you need to persuade people to get on board that this is the right stuff to do, that these are the right things to focus on. And that's by design, because you want a system. Oh, I keep cutting in and out. All good? You want to have a system where you want to make sure people have done their homework, that they're building things for the right reasons. Still happens. Should we switch to the podium? That'd be better. Check. Check. All right, let's give this a try. All right. Can you all hear me okay? In the back? Awesome. I'm going to stay put. All right, so as I was saying, it's about persuading people to build the right stuff. You want to make sure that you've done your homework and you've vetted the reasons for doing something. And so the only way to do this is by building and managing relationships with different stakeholders. And then finally, the last quadrant here is storytelling. So PMs need to be strong communicators, but I think this goes way beyond just business writing or being effective at communicating. As a PM, you own the product's narrative. You own the story being told, and that's a very powerful tool when it comes to keeping people informed, but also motivating them to actually do things. So This is really abstract. Let's talk through some examples that will actually make this a little bit more concrete. So one analogy I like thinking about is group projects. There's a lot of parallels to draw here. And I think most of you by this point have done several group projects, right? Think about one that went really, really well, the best group project you've ever had, where it felt like everybody was on the same page, on the same wavelength, and things just went swimmingly, if that ever happens, right? Now contrast that with one that was an absolute disaster, a chaotic nightmare. Everybody disagreed, people were fighting, folks basically went off on different tangents, you had multiple people building the same thing without realizing it. We've all got those, right? What was the main difference between these? What separates the good projects from the bad ones?
Communication.
What was that?
Communication.
Communication in the back there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that too. Communication.
Communication as well.
Amount of people in the team.
Amount of people in the team, yeah.
Good requirements.
What was that, sir?
Good requirements.
The requirements, yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Good planning beforehand.
Good planning beforehand definitely helps.
Team attitude.
Team attitude in the back there?
People's ability to adapt to change.
Excellent, yeah, people's ability to adapt to change. Last one, anyone? Yeah, you in the back there?
A shared understanding of the priorities.
Yeah, definitely, shared understanding of the priorities. There are a lot of parallels here between good group projects and strong software teams with good PMs. I typically see 4 common traits on really good teams. There's a clear end goal. Everybody's aligned and pushing towards that same objective, that one objective, right? Pretty much being aligned with the priorities. These teams are well coordinated. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that there's one person who owns everything and centralizes all the management. You can have self-organized teams, you can have decentralized management. It all works. Rather, this point is about the fact that everybody is aware of the state of the project. They know what they need to work on next and how to resolve any dependencies or conflicts. There's a clear division of responsibilities. So folks know what they need to be working on, how their piece fits into the bigger picture, and they hold each other accountable for it. When you commit to your team members that you're going to do something, that's a much stronger motivator than when your boss asks you to do something. And finally, decentralized decision making. PMs can't be the bottleneck on teams. And this is a common problem that comes up, especially with PMs early on in their career. When you start seeing success at a company, people around you start noticing and you start getting a little bit more influence. They start seeing you as the go-to person for the product, which is great. It's a good milestone to get to, but it doesn't scale. You only have so many hours in the day and there's only so many questions you can answer. So good PMs really empower the team around them to step up and make decisions, to step up and answer those questions about the product. And your job as a PM becomes making sure that they have the right context, the right information to make those decisions. So if you're one of those people who steps up in your group projects to keep people aligned, good news, you're already doing what a PM does. It's worth going off on a tangent here. Not all PM roles are the same. Because we're bad at naming things, PM, the acronym, often gets used for a lot of different types of roles that are similar but not the same. The most common mix-up is the difference between product managers and project managers. And this is a very honest mistake because execution is the most visible part of the product management role. But project management is a discipline on its own. It's an entire field of study, it's an entire specialization, a whole bunch of skills on its own. And a lot of software teams typically have both roles present, a product manager and somebody doing the project management role. They can sometimes go by the term Scrum Master, Deployment Manager. There's a lot of different flavors of that role too. It really depends on the makeup of the team and the style they use. The real difference is project managers own the when, making sure things run on time, making sure projects ship on time, clear tasks, clear dependencies, clear ownerships, and everybody knows when things are moving. Whereas product managers own the why. It's making sure people have the right context, the right priorities, know why we're working on this thing, but not that thing. There's an overlap, but it's different skill sets. The other common one is product management and product marketing. So you sometimes see PMMs, which are product marketing managers. The exact breakdown between these two roles really depends on the makeup of the company and how they balance their marketing and product divisions. There's a ton of overlap between these roles, but the simplest way to think about it is going back to that little graphic I had around schedules. The R&D piece, the stuff that happens around building new products, is what product managers own, whereas the go-to-market piece, taking existing features to market, is what product marketing managers own. There's a lot of overlap here because there's a lot of feedback that comes from going to market that feeds back into the product development process. So these two roles usually are joined together at the hip. The same principles apply though. PMMs are specialists in your team, and so they're a partner, they're somebody you basically make sure is armed with the right context, and you focus on filling in the gaps elsewhere. And finally, the other flavors of product management, you have roles like product owners, associate product managers, program managers. These tend to focus more on the execution aspects of the job or some larger collection of the responsibilities. But sometimes you even have roles that are focused on a domain, so technical product management roles. They're often paired with some kind of product marketing manager or a PM lead that focuses more on strategic aspects. Speaking of strategy, it's worth actually thinking about how product managers decide on priorities. So let's actually do an example of that. Let's pretend we're managing a company that builds a to-do application, like your favorite to-do application. And we've got several different requests coming in from a variety of different sources, and we've got to figure out how to prioritize this. So we have an angry customer that has asked for a new feature. Let's pretend it's the undo feature. Kind of important, right? You need to be able to undo things. We've got new product user experience that's focused on increasing user engagement. We want to address some tech debt. Let's say there's a database query that's timing out occasionally, and sometimes that's even been known to cause outages in your product. That seems pretty bad. You have a backlog of experiments that you want to run, and they're focused on optimizing some existing feature. Let's pretend it's the upgrade version feature, which is basically tied back to revenue, so it's a little bit easier to reason about. And finally, you have a sales rep that's come to you that has a potential big deal on the table, but you need a new integration. Let's say we've got to build an integration into if this then that, and it's something we don't have yet. How would you prioritize these requests?
I'd say that depends heavily on the company that you're prioritizing them for and what that company's pillars or goals are.
Awesome, yeah. It depends on what the company's pillars or goals are. Any other thoughts?
All of them are important.
All of them are important, but you got to put them in a list because you can't do all of them.
Economic first, and then the amount of people that it would affect afterwards.
Economic first, amount of people, so impact, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Anyone else? In the back there?
Customer value, whatever brings the most value to customers.
Whatever brings the most value for customers. Awesome. Any other thoughts? I think we got, oh, yeah.
So what if I focus on the customer, but then that increases tech debt? So now I'm even enlarging another problem that I have to tackle first.
Absolutely. Some of these have conflicting issues, and doing one might actually.
I'd say that depends heavily on the company that you're prioritizing them for and what that company's
PMs write the specs, but it's less about just telling the developers what to do. It's a collaborative exercise. It's really helpful to have the different perspectives and think through all the different possible cases. Are there dependencies on other features or other teams? PMs can proactively set expectations with those teams or those stakeholders. The idea here is we always want to make sure we stay one step ahead of where the team is, so that the team's never really blocked, at least to the best of our abilities. Is there an opportunity to pay down tech debt? PMs aren't close to the code, so we won't necessarily know this, but if adding a couple of extra days to the schedule can help you solve a related problem, that's almost always a good thing to go do. And last, but super important, is are we on track? This is a very common mistake, especially as new developers. You go into a job, you're asked to make estimates about your software, and those estimates aren't right because they're estimates. They're not supposed to be all the time, right? When your projects go off track, it's so important to let your PM know as early as possible. PMs aren't your second boss. We're not going to get mad at the fact that the schedule's not being followed. We don't want you to be a hero or pull all-nighters. This isn't a school project. This has to be sustainable. It's day-to-day life, right? The reason is PMs have a lot of tools at their disposal. We can very often buy extra time in the schedule. We can adjust different buffers that are already built into the schedule, change things downstream so that folks who are depending on our stuff being done are aware that delays are happening and they can adjust accordingly too. We can play with the scope, maybe cut out some nice to haves. Basically, we're here to work with you to figure out how best to bring the project back on track, and so that you're not working late hours trying to get stuff out the door. Use PMs as a resource. Finally, for those of you interested in pursuing a career as a product manager, there are actually a few different ways you can go about doing so. I like to call these the chaotic path, which is going into a smaller company or a startup, where roles tend to be less defined. You get an opportunity to try different things that you might be interested in. And so this is essentially what I ended up doing. And I can honestly tell you there are better ways, because this is very unstructured, you don't have a safety net, and you're basically thrown into the deep end and hopefully you float. Better is transitioning at potentially a bigger company. It's very, very common for people to transition into product management from an adjacent role. Developers, designers, marketing folks, business analysts, even sales and support. You often see people transitioning from these roles into product management. And larger companies, especially over the past decade, have become a lot more accommodating of this. They'll give you a proper path to do so, that you try out the role for a bit before you actually do commit to it. You might get paired with different mentors, both in and out of the community, in and out of the company, that can help you get a sense of what the role's about, which is a very, very good luxury to have if you can get that opportunity. Lastly, the structured path. This is something that's really come into being over the past few years, especially if you know you want to be a PM right off the bat. These days you can study for it. There are courses out there are classes out there that you can take that teach you the fundamentals, that give you some experience, that will actually get you hands-on doing PM stuff. You can do hackathons to get some more experience, and then the idea is aiming for internships or entry-level roles, associate product manager roles. There are a lot of those out there as well at different companies. This is often the fastest path in, but you need to know that this is what you want to do. Finally, if you're interested in learning more about the role, here's some helpful resources. The product book is a really good starting point. It's absolutely great for the fundamentals. It covers all the basics in a lot more detail than I just did. It's by the folks who run product school, and they actually have a lot of great classes and other content that's useful on their website. Mindtheproduct.com is another awesome website that has a lot of articles, conferences, and meetups that you can potentially attend. Rework is a book that is by the folks who operate 37 Signals. It was very influential in the way that I think about execution and prioritization of projects. And finally, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This one's a classic. It's helpful both in a product management perspective and also in a personal context. It's really great to help you understand and be aware of the influence you have and learn how to grow that influence and be more persuasive with people. In conclusion, I hope you found this glimpse into the world of product management interesting, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for listening.